Hello everybody, I am Arpita Pal, your educator, and once again I am here with another lesson in the course World History relevant from UPSC CSE Mains GS 1 paper point of view, right. So, World History forms a part of GS paper 1, not prelims. So, we are discussing it from mains examination point of view. Previously we have dealt with American Revolution, today we will be dealing with another topic. But before beginning, I need to make an announcement. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel Arpita Sharma Classes to have the daily Hindu news analysis and analysis of economics, polity and many other subjects. So, you can subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get the daily updates. So, let us begin. So, today we will be dealing with Russian Revolution, right. But before beginning, I need to clear one thing. I received few comments regarding the book list. Few students were asking about the book list to refer for world history. See, there are many books, but they depend on what level you are talking about. For example, if you are preparing basically for GS paper 1 or if you are preparing for optional, if your optional is history, then there are some different set of books, whereas for GS there are some different set of books. For example, for GS the Story of Civilization, part 1 and 2, which is old NCERT. Old NCERT class 9th and 10th. You can refer to these books as well. Then class 12th, contemporary world history or world civilization. So, you can refer to class 12th contemporary world history as well, and class 9th and 10th old NCERT. But in case your optional is history or you have history as an optional, then along with these books you should also refer to a book which is Norman Love. This is by Norman Love. So, you should refer to a book by Norman Love, or you can also refer to Jain and Mathur or Ranjan Chakrabarty, right. So, these are a few reference books, out of which Norman Love is a very good book, or book by Norman Love is very good, because but it covers basically the era after World Wars, right, after 1914 I guess. So, it doesn't cover the previous era. So, for that anyhow you have to refer either Jain and Mathur or NCERTs will suffice. So, depending on what level you are preparing for history, you can refer to the following sources. Now, let us begin the topic. Today we will be discussing about Russian Revolution, right. So, Russian Revolution, firstly you need to know what Russia was a part of, or which continent was it a part of, and what happened in Russia, what was the Russian Revolution, why did it take place, what were the main reasons and what was the outcome of the revolution. Firstly, Russia was a part of Europe and a pair of revolutions took place in 1917 in Russia, which are usually termed as the Russian Revolution. So, they are termed as Russian Revolution because a pair of revolutions took place in Russia, and they basically took place as a result of the conflict between common man of Russia and the monarch who was Tsar Nicholas II. So, Tsar Nicholas II, who was a monarch, who was an absolute monarch. An absolute monarch is the one who has every power or whole power in his hands, and the public suffers a lot in such a condition or during absolutism. So, the conflict between common man of Russia and the monarch Tsar Nicholas II led to a series of revolutions, which was Russian Revolution. Also, there were various socio-cultural, political and economic factors which have led to the Russian Revolution, right. So, causes like political, social and cultural causes. But before beginning, I need to give you a brief background about socialism. See, a socialism or a wave of socialism was emerging throughout the country, throughout the world, as you must have read about Industrial Revolution. So, Industrial Revolution during the 15th to 16th centuries, Industrial Revolution took place, which led to a series of other revolutions like the socialism, capitalism. And after capitalism, capitalism was in which there was a very materialistic society. So, after capitalism came a wave of socialism, which was also propounded by Karl Marx, right. So, capitalism, socialism, these were all they were all a series of basically new ideas which were emerging in Europe. So these also came towards Russia. Right, these also came towards Russia. Why? Because in whole of Europe a wave of socialism was going on, and Russia could not resist itself from developing another sense of socialism, right? So Russia was also having a wave of socialism. So firstly we will be dealing with the causes of Russian Revolution. Now see, if you have read about French Revolution, then in case of French Revolution, in case of French Revolution, which I will be dealing with in the next classes, in further classes, firstly you can just now have a summary about it. French Revolution, or in France, there were 3 estates. Now what were the 3 estates? See, France was also being ruled by Bourbon dynasty. There was a monarch, King Louis. So there were 3 estates, the first estate, second estate and third estate, right? Out of these 3 estates, the third estate consisted of the peasants or the common man or the working class, and only they were the ones who used to pay taxes to the king or the government, whereas the first 2 estates, which consisted of the aristocracy or the nobles or the clergy class is one which is the church, okay, the religious section, or which rule the ones who rule the church are the clergies, right, the religious class. So aristocracy and clergy formed the first and second estate, and they did not pay any taxes to the monarch, whereas the third estate used to pay the taxes, and was the most exploited one in France as well, which was also one of the reasons for French revolutions as well. Similarly, in Russia there existed 3 classes: the clergy, the nobles and the peasants and workers. Now the clergy was a religious class who used to control the church. So in case of a clergy class, Rasputin, who was the priest in Russia, he was involved in an extramarital affair with the queen, okay, with Tsarina, with the queen. So this was not liked by basically the people of Russia, because they believed that they are defaming the religion by getting into such a relation, and hence this was not liked by the people of Russia. So they were very much angered about it. Whereas the nobles, nobles, or you can also call the aristocracy class. So the nobles or the aristocrats were the highly paid officials, or the ones who used to hold high positions in the government or in the parliament, and they were very much against the European ideas. I told you that socialism was an emerging concept in Europe, right? So during the 19th century, during the 18th century, socialism was emerging in Europe. So nobles did not want the ideas of socialism to come to Russia. They did not want Russia to be a socialist state. So they behaved like an iron curtain. They tried to curtail every demand of the public, and they tried to be an iron curtain from to prevent Russia from the ideas or the democratic ideas coming from Europe. Similarly, peasants and workers, they were the ones who were most exploited, because there was huge inequality because of the defective taxation policy as well. Because like France, here also the clergy and nobles did not pay any taxes. Instead, most of the share or the highest share of taxes was collected from the peasants and workers, and there was huge inequality around, and also the serfdom was abolished. Now you must be wondering, what is serfdom? If you have read about or if you have heard about the term begar, it is similar to begar only. Serfdom is similar to begar, where the serf is or the serf works as the slave, and he is not paid any salary, but he is asked to work on the land or work on the property of the zamindar, or if you can compare it with the zamindari system as well. So that was serfdom. So serfdom was abolished. Tsar Nicholas did abolish serfdom, but it was only on papers. It was not implemented on ground. Hence the peasants were exploited to another extent. Also, they were deprived of their rights. Various rights like voting rights were not given, and various other rights, and they were deprived of them. So as a result, the public was against the monarch. Now we will be dealing with the economic causes. Lack of distributive justice, because the society was unequal. Highest taxpayers were the peasants. So tax or the taxation policy was very much defective. Hence, there was inequality in the society, and whenever there will be inequality or economic inequality in the society, it will lead to revolution. Mark my words, if there will be economic disparity in the society, then it will definitely lead to revolution, because the people will not suffer or will not agree to suffer for long. Hence, it will definitely lead to revolution. Also, the king Tsar Nicholas II was always at war because of a term. I will explain you further. There was a term which was jingoism. I will explain you further. Basically, it is very much a very high sense of patriotism. Like, if the leader of a country is not able to bring political reforms or cultural or social reforms in the country, or he is not benefiting the public, or he is not able to meet the demands of the people, then he would use a formula of jingoism, which is highest form of patriotism, but a violent one, or basically it is an aggressive foreign policy of the leader as well, that they move to war, or they are pressurized by the public that okay, we should have a war with the enemy nation. But this is known as jingoism, right, which is not a good term, which is not a preferred term. So, king was always at war, and he also had a lavish lifestyle, but where would the revenue come from? There was economic crisis in Russia because only the peasants were exploited. Also, most of the revenue was held by the clergy class or the religious class. So, there was a lack of revenue in Russia as well, but the Tsar or the Tsar Nicholas II was not very much interested, or did not consider it very important. Hence, he kept living his lavish lifestyle and was always at war with other nations or enemy nations. Then defective taxation policy, we have already discussed it. Then the Russian industrialization. So, industrialization also started in Russia, but it was a very slow and gradual process. Unlike England, in which industrialization led to the development of England, in Russia, it was a very slow process, and also the workers were exploited to the core. Why? Because slowly industrialization took place, but it did increase the demand for labor, but they were also exploited. Also, many people went unemployed because industrialization took place. So, people were replaced by machines or the new technology. Hence, industrialization was one of the cause for the Russian Revolution. Now, political cause. See, absolutism. I have already told you that the king or Tsar Nicholas II was an absolute monarch. He wanted to have a centralized power, or he wanted to keep power in his hands. So, he was much more of or he wanted to have a centralization policy, right? So, central administration. Whereas, if you keep the administration to the union, or if you try to keep it to a central administration, then, or if decentralization doesn't take place, then there will be inequality in the society, and an absolute king would not be helpful to the public of his country or to the people of his country. Also, Tsar Nicholas II, who belonged to the Romanov dynasty, he did not very much care about the demands of the public, because he did not want democracy to or he did not want Russia to be a democracy. Otherwise, if Russia becomes a democracy, his rule may come to an end. He knew this. So, he did not want he did not want Russia to be a democracy or a socialist state. Also, people started demanding rights. Why? Because I have already told you that Europe was going through a change of ideology. Socialism was emerging after the Industrial Revolution. Socialism, capitalism, these were the theories that were emerging, these were the ideologies that were emerging in Europe. So, also people thought, or people of Russia thought, that now it is the time that we should also demand our political, cultural rights. So, they demanded rights from the king, but the king didn't want to provide them with any rights. So, he diverted the attention of the public via jingoism. I have already told you, it is a severe form of patriotism, or a very highest form of patriotism, in which the leader or the king of the country or the nation diverts the attention of the public towards the patriotic or towards the nationalistic feelings. For example, he would tell people that, see, I am fighting war for you with our enemy nations, and now we are having a very aggressive foreign policy. So, people's attention would be diverted that the king is very nice, and he is working for us at the international level, and he is fighting wars for the people, for us. So, the attention of people will be diverted. This is jingoism, which is not a very good term, which is not a good scene, right? Jingoism is not, it cannot be termed as a positive term. Then there were other political causes, like in 1899, Russia occupied Manchuria. I have already told you that King Tsar Nicholas II was using the policy of Jingoism, right? So what did Russia do in 1899? Russia occupied Manchuria, which was a Chinese territory. Now you must be wondering, how can Russia acquire Chinese territory? If we talk about today, then in today's scenario, China is one of the most powerful nation right now, right? So how can Russia acquire Manchuria? But at that time, Chinese was also a colony, because that was a period of colonialism. Various countries were colonies of different nations. So China was also a colony, and it did not have much power of its own. So Russia occupied the Chinese territory Manchuria, but the same territory was also claimed by Japan. So Japan did not like that Russia has occupied Manchuria. As a result, it should be 1905, sorry, it should be 1905, right? Wait, it should be 1905. So Russo-Japan War took place in 1905, and as a result, Russia lost. But Russia didn't only lose the war, it also lost its confidence, its morale, its dignity. So that is why Russia suffered a lot, not just economically but morally as well. And also, you must be wondering that why did Russia lose? How did Russia lose? That is because Japan was supported by Britain. As per the Anglo-Japan Treaty, if you have read about it in modern history, then it's well and good. Otherwise, I'll explain you when we will be discussing about world wars or the French Revolution. I'll explain you in detail the treaty as well. So Japan was supported by Britain, and Britain was one of the most powerful nation at that time. It was one of the most imperialistic nation at that time, and thus this led to the loss of Russia in Russo-Japan War. People of Russia then urged for political reforms, because they thought that the king is doing nothing for us. He is just fighting wars. And what about the political reforms? Neither we have voting rights, neither we have right to equality. Then they demanded, or they started demanding, political reforms in Russia. As a result, in 1905, when the people of Russia thought that now it's high time and we should demand a political social rights, so a revolution started in 1905. But now what did Tsar Nicholas do? Tsar Nicholas said, okay, I will promise you political reforms, I will bring political reforms in the country, and as a result he formed parliament in Russia, which was known as Duma. But what was the point here? That Tsar Nicholas II, though he established parliament in Russia or Duma, but the parliament was having limited powers. It was having limited voting rights or no voting rights, and all the power was centered in, or the Tsar, or Tsar Nicholas II was the nucleus of all power. All power was controlled, or everything was controlled by the king by using rule of law. He also used rule of law to suppress his opponents. How? Anybody who used to oppose the king was not admitted to the parliament, or was not allowed to be a part of the parliament Duma. So though in front of the nation, in front of the people, he created a parliament, he showed them that okay, I am giving you political reforms. But on the other hand, in the backdrop of this parliament, what did the king do? He kept everything, or all the power, in his hands only, and the parliament was having limited or almost no powers. Then in 1911 to 1914, or between 1911 to 1914, there was a political turmoil or instability in Russia. Because see, people did not like it, right? People thought that okay, now we have been given parliament, but when they realized that the parliament is having only limited power, they did not like it. Hence there was a turbulent situation or a turbulent time in Russia. As a result, in 1914, Duma lost power. Then what happened? A new legislative assembly was formed. See, now Duma did not have any power, but through Duma only, a new legislative assembly was formed, and a new PM was elected, who was Peter Stolypin. Peter Stolypin was the one who was almost opposite to Tsar Nicholas II. He tried to reform Russia. How did he reform Russia? He started various socio-cultural and political reforms. For example, he gave land to the peasants. Hence, he tried to remove inequality. What else did he do? He improved, or he reformed, or he improved the condition of workers in factories. Sorry. Right. What else did he do? Also, the factory system improved. So, these were some of the reforms that were brought by the new PM or the new elected PM, who was Peter Stolypin. So, he tried to bring equality, and he brought land reforms in the country. He was just opposite to the Tsar Nicholas II. But do you think this would be liked by the king? No, because the king thought that I have made him the prime minister, but unlike me, he is reforming the society. He is giving them political rights. ये तो अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं. He is doing good for the people. And if he becomes popular among the people, then what about me? My monarchy will lose its power. I have to vacate my seat. I'll have to vacate my position. What happened in 1911? Stolypin was assassinated in front of Tsar Nicholas II. In front of Tsar Nicholas II, Stolypin was assassinated by the people, by a murderer. He was assassinated. But do you think people won't understand this? People question that Tsar Nicholas II was in front of Stolypin, but nothing happened to Tsar Nicholas, and Stolypin was killed. They realized that it was a conspiracy of Tsar Nicholas II against Stolypin, and hence they had a conflict against the monarch. As a result, in July 1914, World War started globally. This is not in Russia, but at the world level, at the international level, World War I started. In World War I, Serbia was against Austria. I can give you a gist about Serbia and Austria. What happened? That Austrian king, or Austrian prince, sorry, Austrian Prince Archduke Ferdinand was basically killed or assassinated by a Serbian terrorist group. As a result, Austria didn't like it, and Austria gave Serbia a timeline of 1 month to hand over them the convicts or to punish the convicts, but Serbia didn't agree to it, and as a result, Austria attacked Serbia. And because Austria was also supported by some of the world powers, World War took place. Now, what did Russia do here? Russia supported Serbia against Germany. So, Russia supported Serbia against Germany. Russia thought that okay, we'll be on the winning side, and as a result, Germany would lose. So, Tsar Nicholas II thought that okay, I'll also win the trust of my people, as I'll be heading, or I'll be a part of the World War I. But in 1917, as a result of participation in World War I, Russia came under crisis, because see, war has its own implication. It is never easy to fight a war. The ones who basically favor war, or who basically are the ones who feel that okay, war is the only solution, they are not right, because war is never a solution. War leads to an economic crisis, social crisis, because people lose their lives. The country is under huge economic debt. Whichever country is fighting the war is under huge economic debt. Same happened with Russia as well, that it was under huge economic crisis, social crisis, because the morale of the people was quite down. It lost many of its soldiers in the World War, though it was on the winning side, but it could not face the crisis, or it could not handle the economic crisis it was suffering from. As a result, in February 1917, Tsar Nicholas II abdicated his position, and he tried to make his brother the ruler, but his brother refused, and thus began the February Revolution in Russia. Now see, in many books you may find that there is given March Revolution, or in some books you can find it is given as February Revolution, but the difference is only that the Russians, or in Russia, they follow Julian calendar, whereas in India, or we follow the Gregorian calendar. So 1 month is basically either ahead or behind the other ones. So you may find that in some books it is given as March Revolution, or in some books it is given as February Revolution, but it is one and the same, right? Now what happened? I told you that February Revolution took place, right? Now what happened in February Revolution? people realized that okay, the king is of no good to us, he has already been abdicated. So a new party arose, which was the Socialist Democratic Party or the Socialist Party. This Socialist Party had two groups, the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks. Now, if you remember in modern history, you must have read about the extremists and the moderates, right? But the comparison is not correctly right, but I am just giving you to help you have a reference, or to help you or to make you better understand the topic. So the Mensheviks or the Bolsheviks, they were both a part of the Socialist Party, but they had ideological differences. They had ideological differences, and hence the Socialist Party had broken into two groups. Now the Bolsheviks were the ones who wanted to rule, Russia, but they were the ones who believed in immediate revolutions. Right, whereas the Mensheviks were the one who had a gradual approach towards everything. They believed, like the moderates and the extremists, the moderates used to think that we'll go via the constitutional reforms, and we'll move ahead gradually. But the extremists were the ones who were more of a revolutionary nature, who believed that only revolution can help the country achieve freedom, whereas the moderates and extremists had an ideological difference as well. So there was an ideological conflict between the two. But what happened in Russia, that during the February Revolution, the leader of the Mensheviks, who was Kerensky, he assumed power, right? He formed a provisional government. What did he form? He formed a provisional government. So he formed a provisional government. Now what happened? See, Alexander Kerensky, he was a Menshevik leader. He was leader of the Socialist Party, and he formed a provisional government in Russia. But what did he do? The few decisions taken by him were that he did not withdraw Russia from World War I. Also, he did not conduct immediate elections. What happened then? This led to an internal conflict in the party. The Bolsheviks were asking that we should have elections right now, and we should withdraw from World War I, and we should have a revolution at the moment. We should have immediate revolution. But Mensheviks did not want this. They wanted to have a gradual process. So Bolshevik leader Leon Trotsky, who was against the Mensheviks, who wanted immediate reforms, he was the leader of the Bolsheviks. So he was jailed due to his ideological conflict with Mensheviks. Then what happened? The first military coup took place in Russia. General Kornilov, he tried to capture power. So military came in Russia, he tried to the General Kornilov, or you can also call it the Kornilov affair. It took place in Russia, and as a result, Kerensky got afraid, so he approached the Bolsheviks for help. Now the Bolsheviks said that okay, we'll help you, just give us arms to fight at Petrograd, and give us arms to fight, and we'll help the country, we'll help Russia from, or we'll prevent military coup in Russia. As a result, the Bolsheviks came to power. Then happened the return of Lenin. So Lenin, who was one of the leaders in Russia, he was sent to Europe because of his few policies. So he returned from Europe, and as a result, in April 1917 at Petrograd he returned, and he realized that okay, now I should have the power, I should control the power, or I should have all the power in my hand, and all the power now lied with the Soviets. The Soviets were the elected government in a communist state, right? So if a state is communist, and the representative government in the, or the elected government in a communist state is the Soviet. So now all power resided with the Soviets, and as a result they formed a military revolutionary council as well. It was much of an aggressive and much of a revolutionary party. Soviets were much of a revolutionary in nature, and they brought Soviet army under their control as well in May 1917. What happened? Lenin also suppressed his opponents. He believed in a total communism. So he believed that rather than moving with the opponents or making them understand the situation, he suppressed his opponents as well. Then another revolution broke out in 1917. Bolshevik leader, or Lenin, who was a Bolshevik leader, I have already told you the difference between the Mensheviks and Bolsheviks. So Lenin came to power, and Kerensky ran away. then all important buildings or nationalized buildings or the important places in Russia, they all came under the government control at St. Petersburg. And now began the last phase of Russian Revolution, which was between 1917 to 1922. Now there were 4 groups in Russia: the Mensheviks, Bolsheviks, supporters of Tsar, and landlords and church. The landlords and church were also supported by countries like USA, Britain, and others. Now, why do you think that landlords and church would be supported by countries like USA and Britain? That was because USA and Britain did not want communism to rise in Russia. See, communism and socialism, you must be thinking that it is the same term, but it is not. On one hand, where socialism believes in the power, or on one hand, when socialism believes in the end of capitalism, it is basically a slow process. I'll give you the difference between socialism and communism right now. But I just understand that communism is much of a revolutionary process. It tries to end capitalism, but via revolutions, and it refers to the abolition of complete abolition of private property and nationalization of all resources. But USA and Britain thought if Russia becomes a communist state, we will not be able to control it. Hence, they supported landlords and church so that the religious sentiments or the religious authority remains intact in Russia. Now, how was USSR formed? Now, in 1922, the Red Army won, and it was of communist ideology. So, there were 2 armies, right? Let me explain you on the. See, I'll explain you the last phase of revolution on the white screen. This was during 1917 to 1922. What happened? See, we'll see it as a timeline. World War I ended, which was started in 1914. Then what happened? In 1919, there was a Paris conference, Paris Peace Conference. See, this was basically a conference of all the nations. After World War I ended, all the nations were invited to Paris Peace Conference to work out on a deal of peace in the world. But in this peace conference, Russia was not invited because Russia was moving towards a communist state. So Russia was not invited here, and hence it was not supported by anyone in the world. Then what happened? In 1917 to 1922, civil war broke out in Russia. Right, civil war broke out, and thus some of the parties tried to overthrow the Bolsheviks. I've already told you there were 4 types of parties or 4 types of powers that were struggling to have the power in Russia. So there were few parties, and 2 of them were the White and the Red Army. Right, Whites were the ones who believed in democratic reforms or democracy, whereas the Red Army was of the ideology of a communist state. So what happened in the struggle between these? The Red Army won. As a result, some radical changes were brought and USSR was formed. Understood? So Red Army won and USSR was formed. Now, communist ideology is the one which thinks that you should just snatch something if you are not getting it. So USSR becomes a communist state, and hence it it destroyed churches and was more of an atheist. It did not believe in God. It did not believe in religion. More of a atheist state. Now comes the impact of Russian Revolution. See, Russia became a communist and a secular state because I've already told you that communism doesn't believe in any god or any religion, so it became a secular state. This was a positive point, but at the same time, it also became a communist state, which is not a very good ideology. It is good on paper. It is ideologically communism is right, but it is much more of a violent ideology. Also, nationalization of resources and property took place. So what you think would be the negative effect of nationalization of resources? Nationalization of resources will lead to unemployment as well. Why? Because the government will tell you what you have to work upon, or what work will be assigned to you, irrespective of your skills or your talent. So nationalization of resources took place. Then equality was established in Russia. As I have already told you that everything was under government's control, so equality was established in Russia. But at the same time, when equality was established, the spread of communism also took place. I'll explain you right now. Also, it brought to an end the monarchy, and communism spread throughout the world. Formation of CPI in India and HSRA is a result of the communal ideology. CPI, or the Communist Party of India, was formed at Tashkent, and there were various communist leaders like M.N. Roy, Abani Mukherjee. These were the communist or the people or the leaders with communist ideology in India. So in 1920s, the communist ideology spread towards India as well. HSRA, which was a party established by Bhagat Singh, or which was a party of Bhagat Singh, it was also very much influenced by the thoughts of or the ideology of Lenin. Then as a result, in 1921, a new economic policy of Russia was formulated, which also influenced the Indian leaders like Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose. And thus the policy or the plan of 5-year plans or etc. was implemented in India as well, but it was Nehruvian socialism rather than the Lenin's communism. Now I just told you that I'll explain you the difference between communism and socialism. See, socialism, when we talk about, it is an evolutionary process. It is still evolving, right? Or it is an evolutionary ideology. Whereas communism, it is much more revolutionary in nature. Similarly, socialism believes that different classes can live together. Whereas communism completely believes in a class-less society. There should be no classes, everything should be under government's control. Nationalization of resources. Whereas, do you think that socialism believes in the same? No. It believes that proportional wealth should be there, and it also allows the state control along with private sector. For example, India, we have not nationalized resource, or whenever the LPG reforms took place in India around 1990s, the LPG reforms did not completely nationalize everything in the or every public property in the country. In fact, we also allowed the private partnership as well. Private sector was also allowed because we did not completely believe in the ideology of communism. We had our own brand of socialism. The then Prime Minister Mrs. Indira Gandhi said that India does not believe in Russian socialism or Russian communism. India has its own brand of communism, socialism. Right. So this is the basic difference between socialism and communism. You must find you might have found the two terms to be similar, but there is a very thin line between these two terms. So I hope you have understood everything. Do mention in the comment section if you have any doubt, and do read the books as well. See, no teacher can, or the books cannot replace any teacher, and any teacher cannot replace the book. So book reading is very important. Do go through the books as well. Thank you.